What is happening, my friends? Welcome back to the channel. So the Tacoma we built is done. Now it's back to reality, and we're back on the 91 Toyota pickup. Now, like I said in a previous video, I got a buddy coming over to help me with body work on the truck, so we got to get it all ready. That means pulling fender flares off, pulling tail lights. We got to pull door panels so we can get inside of the doors to kind of work on the doors. We also have a new tailgate that we need to fit up. This one's pretty dang rough, so I got a new tailgate we got to bolt on and see if that thing's gonna fit right. There's kind of a weird line here on the passenger side. You can see the bottom is super tight, top is kind of loose, so I'm not sure. There is a dent right here. Now this is your typical dent that you get when you get rear-ended and the bumper smacks into the bed, and it put the dent in the bed, kind of the shape of the bumper. So we got to fix that. But I'm almost thinking when it got hit, it kind of messed up the bedside a little bit. So I want to get the new tailgate on and kind of figure out what is going on with that. I'm not sure if it pushed the bottom in or if it kind of pushed the top out. There's a couple different things it could be, but either way, we got a few things to do today to get ready for my buddy when he comes over. So like I said, fender flares, inner fenders, door panels, tail lights, fit the new tailgate. We got a few things to do, so let's get after it.
Today we're going to see Austin Niemela take his whole truck apart, and he has a special guy coming to help him fix it. So we're gonna watch him, and subscribe and leave a comment below if you like this video.
Well, we got it most of the way ready. Now I want to pull some well, I don't want to, but we need to pull all these decals off of the sides of the truck, and the new tailgate we got has some, we got to get these factory decals off, obviously, for paint. So I'm not sure what we're gonna try. Honestly, these are just dry, cracked. These are not gonna be fun to pull off, but these gotta come off. So let's tackle that. And then I wanna go through and give it a nice wash. I wanna make sure this thing is as clean as we can get it. I'm actually probably gonna use like Dawn dish soap and just a gray scuff pad, like a Scotch-Brite pad, and just go over the entire thing. We're painting it anyway, so I don't care about scratching it, but the Scotch-Brite is just gonna take off all the crap that's stuck on this paint. And there's so much on this hood. There's all this black stuff on this hood. I'm not even sure what it is, but we got to get all this off. We got to get it as clean as we can get it, and then once Rob shows up, we'll start banging some bodywork out. You can see here it's pretty, I mean, it's not, like I said, it's not terrible, but if you can see the bed, kind of, hopefully you guys can kind of see that it's not terrible. Like I said, it's not a bunch of big stuff. It's just a lot of just like wrinkles, and it's just a lot of little stuff. This side's a little bit worse. Obviously we have that big dent in the back there, and then this back side of the bed is a little bit pushed up, kind of up into here, and then kind of pushed down in the back there. So we got to figure all that out. But like I said, once Rob gets here, we will use his expertise and kind of get this thing straightened out. Well, that was not fun. We got the driver's side done. Now, while I would not recommend taking a freaking razor blade to these decals, it worked pretty good for me. The blade stayed on top of the glue for the most part. And like I said, it's getting painted. As long as I didn't scratch any paint off, I'm happy. But honestly, I don't think we really even touched the paint. So now what we're gonna do is we gotta get all the glue off. What we're using for that is one of these 3M wheels. This is just like a rubber wheel that really grips onto that glue and it rips it right off. I already tried it on this fender here and you can see it looks perfect after doing this wheel little treatment. So we'll get all that off and then we'll jump on the other side, tackle that, and then we'll scrub it all up, like I said, with some Scotch-Brite and some soap, get this thing as clean as we can get it. Well, we got the truck all cleaned up, which this thing looks so much better now. This is the first time I've ever even washed it since I got it. Looks a little better, and then got the hood ready to go. There is a couple dents in the hood we need to figure out, but I just wanted to get it all cleaned up. Got the bottom side all scrubbed up too. So Rob should be here soon, and we'll figure out a game plan for kind of what we want to do with this bodywork. While we're waiting, I figure I'm gonna get started. This is probably the worst dent, and we're gonna have to go down to bare metal. So I'm just gonna grab the DA and just kind of strip this entire corner off. That way when Rob gets here, we're not sanding paint off. We can just go straight in if that's what he wants to start with. Either way, the paint's gotta come off of this, so let's get that cleaned up. Well, Rob showed up. He's smacking some dents out over here, making it look all pretty. So we got this side. I'm gonna start doing just a little bit of glaze on these spots. Fender is really close, door is really close, and then we still got obviously extra cab, and the bed's the big one. But a little glaze on this, and then I'll jump on when he's done, maybe do some glaze over there. Well, Rob was here for a couple hours and made some pretty good progress. We got driver's side door and fender all ready to go in filler, and then the passenger side fender is ready to go. He did do some body work, some pushing around of metal on the door on the passenger side, and then he started on the bed, which is coming out pretty good, but he had to get some tools, some of his own tools. I don't have a shrinker, so he was gonna bring that over tomorrow and finish this up. So you can see right here where that big crease was. He's been banging around on that, but like I said, it's kind of turning into a pop can, so he's gonna have to shrink that back down, and then we'll keep on moving and see how far we can get this week with just a couple hours a night. Well, it's the next day. While we're waiting for Rob to show up tonight after work, I'm gonna get started on the hood. I'm gonna tackle this. There's a few dents, one right there, and one right there, maybe a couple other small ones, but I want to try my new dent puller. I picked this Weaver up. If you guys have ever used the stud welder style dent pullers, those are an absolute pain in the butt. This one should go a lot better. How this one actually works is you put this onto the gun and you just basically tack weld that on, and it's got the slide hammer, so you tack it on, you pull on it, you break it off, you move it, you tack it, you pull it, and it's so much faster, and when you're done you don't have those studs all over your panels, so it makes it much easier for that. And then there's a ton of different attachments in here, a bunch of tabs there, and then I think they call that silly wire or funky wire or something that you can weld on. Like if you had a really long crease, you basically tack weld this in and then get the hooks and pull on that. And I don't know, there's a couple other doodads in here, but I'm excited to try it out. So let's get the paint ground off. It's got to be bare metal, obviously, because we're basically welding to it. So we'll grind out all the dents, and then you can see all these other little spots where rock chips that had rust in them. So I wanted to make sure there was no rust. We ground those out, and we're just going to use some glaze, a dolphin glaze from U-Pull. A very good product, perfect for filling in rock chips. It sands easy, it applies really, really smooth. So it's a great product for doing just little minor details like that. Well, I gotta say, using this dent puller versus the stud style is so much easier. We got most of this stuff ready to go. Well, we got it all ready to go for some filler. So like I said, we're just gonna use a dolphin glaze, and some of these really shallow ones like that, I blocked it and got it really close. Now it just needs just a skim coat of glaze and it'll look perfect. So let's get some glaze mixed up, hit all these spots, sand that out, and then we'll probably have to do high build primer on it after that and just block it all, and it should turn out pretty dang flat. Well, we made some progress today. Passenger door, passenger extra cab is done. This bedside just needs some filler. Tailgate is done, other than just needs to be sanded, and then we got to do this side. But what I'm going to do now is some high build primer on the hood. What the high build primer does is it's a really thick primer, so you can spray. I'm going to spray it on the entire hood, and then we'll block sand it. And if there's still any little waves or any imperfections that we missed, and all the sand scratches and everything in the body filler. That's gonna fill all that in. So that's what we're gonna do next is some high build primer, and then we gotta let that sit for probably 3 days before you really want to sand it, because the primer will shrink, and if you sand it too soon, it'll continue to shrink into all the sand scratches, and then once you paint it, you'll see all those scratches. So we want to let that primer really set up and dry up before we sand it. Over here getting this tailgate sorted out. Like I said, hood, we're gonna give a few days to dry up. So I'm gonna work on other stuff. And this one's turned out pretty good. There was a couple spots we had to fill, and there's a couple more. We got a little low spot there, and right in here. So we got to fill those, and then we got to get some primer on this thing. Let's talk about primers real quick. This is one thing that confused me when I first started painting. Is I always thought primer was primer, and I always just bought the surfacer thinking it's just primer, it can go over anything and all is well. Now that is slightly true, but is slightly not true. Now the two primers we're going to talk about right now is epoxy primer and the primer surfacer, also known as a high build primer. Now the function of an epoxy primer is very, very good for corrosion resistance over bare steel, whereas high build primer not so much. Now you can get away with smaller spots with high build primer going over bare steel, but you don't want to do big areas because there's not much corrosion resistance in high build primer. So that's the two main differences between epoxy and high build. High build is like it sounds, it's a high build primer. So it's great to go over body filler, anything that needs just another layer, something nice and fine, and you can sand down nice and flat. That's where high build comes in. Epoxy primer does not sand very good, so you don't want to be stuck sanding a bunch of epoxy primer. Now there also is etch primer, which etch primer is a bare metal primer as well, kind of like epoxy, but I think epoxy is much better than etch. And then you do have a sealer as well. A sealer is for going over your entire panels or your entire truck before base coat. That just gives it a nice uniform color to spray your base coat on. Now instead of buying a separate primer for sealer, what I do, and many other, I'd say most people do, is take epoxy primer and thin it down so that it sprays really nice and flat, and then you just use that as your sealer. And epoxy primer, most epoxies you can coat on top of within like 3 to 5 days without any sanding. You get a chemical adhesion without any sanding at all. So you can go through and seal or epoxy your entire car, wait a couple days, and spray base coat right on top of that without any sanding. So that's one really good thing about epoxy. Now it's kind of tricky picking what primer to use on something like this. This whole top edge, I had little rust spots and the clear coat was peeling, so I had to strip it. That's all bare metal. So you could potentially do high build primer, but since this is kind of a high wear spot, you know, you're always kind of kicking it, jumping over the tailgate and whatever, I think I'm just going to take some epoxy and just do just this top section just to get my corrosion resistance on that bare metal. And then I'm going to go through and high build this entire tailgate here, but that's after we do our body filler. And I also got to flip it over. There's a couple holes on the top right up here that I want to weld up, get that all figured out first, and then we'll flip it back over, do our filler, our epoxy on the top, and then I'm just going to high build the whole thing so we can block it down, make sure it's nice and flat. We are making some good progress, guys. Got the tailgate. This thing turned out really straight. We got this in high build primer. We're gonna let that sit, let the hood sit. Rob was over yesterday and was working on this side. Look at how good this freaking corner turned out. I need to have him come over more often when we're doing body work. We started doing some skim coating on this bed on the top here. It's just kind of wavy. So we're just gonna skim coat kind of this entire thing. You can see it's already getting pretty good. And then all this other body work, that was a pretty big crease right there. That one turned out good. And then a couple other things we need some body filler on. But what I think I'm gonna tackle today, Rob's not coming over for a couple days. So what I wanna kind of do is cover up some of this body filler. Body filler is very hard to clean. If you were to get grease or anything on it, fingerprints, you can't really use wax and grease remover on it because it's kind of a sponge. It's really porous and it just soaks up the cleaner. So you really don't want to wipe any cleaner on your body filler. So what I think I'm going to do today, we got fenders, both fenders and both front doors that are ready to go for high build primer. So what I think I'm going to do is shoot some high build primer on these. Now you don't have to do the entire panels like I did over here. I think the fenders I might just do the entire panels, but like this door, it doesn't pay to do the entire door just because the rest of it is in really, really good shape. And we're going to go over that obviously when we seal the truck before we do our base coat. So we don't really need primer on this. This really just needs a good sanding and then we can paint over the top of that. So we're going to just spot prime those areas. Like I said, when you have a panel that most of it has body filler or kind of a lot of it does, I would say it's probably a better idea to just do high build primer on the entire thing. So we'll do that. Fenders fully coated, and these doors, this one I'll probably just do the whole bottom and then just kind of patch those two areas there with a high build. And then once we sand it, we'll feather all the primer out, and then like I said, sealer goes on, a complete coat of sealer on the entire truck before we move to paint. Well, Rob's back finishing up this side of the bed with the body filler, getting that all straightened out. What I'm going to do is block out the hood. So what we're going to use is some guide coat. What the guide coat does, we just do like a really light kind of a mist coat over the entire hood. And when you block it out with a block here, we got a pretty stiff block. You can tell where the low spots are because the guide coat will still be in the low spots. I know there's one right in here. It's pretty shallow, but this will help kind of verify where our low spots are if we need any more attention on anything. So I'm going to start with 220 grit sandpaper and then we finish it off with 400. So let's block this thing out and see how flat it really is. So this is what guide coat's for. You can see right here where all that black is, that is a low spot. So we're gonna keep blocking until we get that black out, all that little guide coat we put in that low spot. Once we have that out, we know the dent's out. If the dent's still there, then we're gonna need a little bit of filler in there, but I think that'll block out fine. Well, we got the hood all blocked out. 99% of the low spots came out. There's one low spot right here that I think I'm just gonna put a little glaze over, and then there's a couple rock chips that I missed. So I'm gonna hit those with glaze, fill those in, and then we're gonna get the high build out again and just kind of hit these spots that are sand throughs just to get those all covered up. And then back here, there were some low spots here that all came out, but we did expose the red, which honestly doesn't really matter because we're sealing it anyway. But I think I'm just gonna hit these spots again while we have the high build out. I mean, it's not gonna hurt anything, so we'll do that. And the hood will be good to go. This bedside is about 90%. There's just a couple little touch-ups we need to do. And then once those are filled in, we'll go through and glaze some of the spots that have little pinholes here and there. We'll glaze those, sand that out. And then this thing is ready for some high build. Well, Rob's been hard at work on body work. This side is almost done, just needs a little more touch up. But what I'm gonna do now is do my touch ups on the high build primer. So a little low spot there. There was a little low spot right there and right there. So I'm just gonna kind of hit this section of the hood. And then there was one spot there on the fender, one spot up front in the fender, and a couple little spots on the doors, and this entire bedside is ready for high build too. So I'm gonna get some high build mixed up, hit all these spots, and like I said, we wanna let this stuff dry up for a few days. By that time, that passenger side or driver's side should be done. We can throw some high build on that, and that's really about it. Once we get this high build done, bodywork should be good enough, and we can seal it and move to our paint from there. Well, I am thoroughly impressed with Rob's bodywork. This stuff, this bedside looks so dang good. Now, those aren't lines that you see, those aren't dents, those are lines where I did my passes on my primer. But like always, there's a couple things I missed and a couple pinholes right back here. There's a couple rock chips down there. But honestly, I am very happy with how that bedside looks. So once that dries up, we'll block it out and we'll hit our little pinholes, hit our rock chips, all of our last minute little things. And this bedside should be 100%. It looks so good. Well, we are getting so close, guys. We got the driver's side, bedside, and extra cab part blocked out. Now, you can't expect the first go around on the high build primer blocking to be perfect. Really, the first application of the high build just really tells you what needs more work. So with the guide coat and blocking it out with a nice stiff block, that'll give you a really good idea on what you need to fix. So we got a couple low spots and then a few pinholes from the filler that we need to fill. We'll hit it one more time with some high build and we should be good. Now, we probably don't need to hit the entire thing with high build because, you know, 80% of it is good. good and doesn't need any more attention. So really from there, all we really need to do is hit it with 400 grit sandpaper and we are ready for sealer and paint. So unless you like wasting a bunch of high build primer, I'm just gonna go through and hit the light spots. Like I got a couple spots where the body filler is showing. I'm gonna go through and hit that and block that one more time just because those were a little bit high. So coating the entire area again, surrounding that, blocking that down is gonna kind of feather everything in and hide all that. So that's kind of the game plan. Let's get the glaze on those pinholes and low spots. We'll block that. More primer, block that, and then we're done with bodywork. It's insane to say that because this was so much work, but having Rob over here definitely was a huge help. So let's get this all busted out and then we're ready to pull this entire truck back apart. I'm gonna pull the cab, pull the bed because I am changing colors. So I'm gonna be spraying the engine bay, the door jambs, and it's gonna be so much easier with the cab and the bed off. I can roll the frame out of here, not have to worry about overspray or anything, and I actually have access to the entire engine bay. Well, that about wraps up this video, guys. All we really have to do now is just block this driver's side, bedside one more time. But like I said, I'm gonna give this probably 3-4 days to really shrink up before we block it. So other than that, we just have to go over the entire truck with probably 400 grit before sealer, but I wanna wait till we get this thing all stripped down. We're gonna pull the cab off, pull the bed off. One quick scuff with 400 on the entire thing just to kind of reduce the sand scratches. And then we're on to sealer and paint. So I still need to decide on the color and pick up some paint, some clear coat, and strip this thing down and we'll be ready to spray it out. Well, I gotta say, having Rob over here helping me on body work was a lifesaver. It would have taken me so long to go through this entire thing and straighten it out, and it looks so freaking good. Both bedsides were pretty wavy. Now these things look perfect. I'm freaking stoked to get some paint on it and see how it looks. Either way, guys, I'm out here next, like I said, next video we're gonna be painting this thing, so definitely stay tuned if you want to see what color we do, and this thing should look brand new when we're done with it.